Welcome to the first ever Business of Property podcast. I'm Simon.
And I'm Stuart.
We're both property people running our own businesses. This podcast is just us chatting, as we often do, about anything and everything property. Stuart, I know you've been looking around a few potential investment properties recently. How did that go and what have you found?
Well, I think you've caught me at the right time this week because, yes, last week I went to look at a former convent that was built around 1847 and also a Victorian property which was split into 3 flats. I should mention that the convent was most recently a brothel. So
I think you've had connections with that line of business before, haven't you? I'm sure you've told me about those before. We'll come back to those later, maybe.
Yeah, well, I don't know what you're trying to insinuate, but I strenuously deny anything and everything. So we're looking at that. So that's a very interesting property for what I would like to do with it in terms of a shared living space. And the second property was a Victorian property, which was currently set up as 3 flats equaling 5 rooms. And I'm not making this up because these two are quite interesting. The estate agent or the auctioneer representative wouldn't enter the property with us. She felt it was so dirty and decrepit. She said, "You'll have to go in alone." So I went to see a former...
Was it that bad?
It was pretty bad. It was pretty... I mean, I've been to much, much worse. But it wasn't that bad. But so there's 2 properties.
Could you smell it before you went through the door?
Pretty much. I mean, I should be careful about what I say because there were people living there.
Oh my goodness, it was actively rented.
So it was actively rented, and that's one of the challenges with it. But as you know, if we're in the property world, generally where we look to make money is where there are problems that need to be solved.
Yeah.
And both of these properties, as you can hear, have had problems or are having problems. It's just whether or not you want to be the person that solves that problem. That's the.
So what was wrong with the convent?
Nothing wrong with the convent actually. It's actually been cleared out. It's a really nice property. It's definitely grade 2. Some of it might even be grade 1 because some of it's a really nice Georgian property. It's a lovely property, and yeah, it's been cleared out. It just needs a lot of internal work doing to it, restructuring, reshaping. It's one of those, they've sold it as an 8-bed, but when we do our due diligence on it, it's got a licence for 6. So when I'm looking at the calculations on that, I've already knocked 2 beds off it. But I'd look to solve that problem as well because I want to turn it into an HMO, a house with multiple occupation. And for me to work, it probably needs 7 beds. So that's something for me to work on. The 3 flats, I took a builder out with me, and just to strip it out, we were talking about costs of 25k. And that's just to strip the property out. So
then you've got to put it back together again afterwards.
And then you've got to put it back together again in such a way that someone would want to live there. That's the trick.
Would you be looking to combine the flats so it's a larger single HMO property, or would you keep them separate?
No, that one would keep separate. So based on the market that I operate in, which is more student, young professional, we'd want 1 beds or 2 beds. They're kind of what people want right now, as opposed to higher numbered properties. So that's mine. What have you been looking at? Have you looked at any brothels or any other establishments that might raise an eyebrow?
I don't think I've got any brothels on my list, no. The 2 properties that have caught my eye recently, one was also a property that had been split into 2 flats, although from the looks of the description I get the feeling it had been done unofficially. But it was a house where the back garden had been taken away and been developed on. Presumably the developers had decided not to do anything with this bit they had left over. I'm not quite sure why, but it's on a very popular road, very good residential road, and it's up for quite a low price. But another interesting giveaway for it is there were no internal photos on the property listing.
Yeah.
And I went around and had a look at the outside, but unfortunately I didn't get to go inside, and it's sold already. So it's obviously a good property for somebody. Jumped on that quite quickly.
And unusually must have been up for the right price, which is very rare.
Yeah. Pricing at the moment seems to be crazy. You get some listings come on, look just right or cheap, and you get lots just coming on at crazy odd prices scattered all over the places. And I think estate agents are having a hard time knowing where to price things at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, and on that point, I mean, yes, we all know that the estate agent's going to take a value or value the property and then add a margin to that property so that you get somewhere in the region, but it seems like they're being overvalued at the moment. I just had a property valued actually to sell from my portfolio, and I had two valuations. One estate agent valued it at 20% more than the other one, and I already had an idea in my mind. Obviously, working in the area, so it's a property in the area I'm in, so I had an idea in my mind, and so one of them valued it, and in terms of actual monetary terms, they valued it around £40,000 to £50,000 higher than what I had in my head and what the other agent valued at. So
wow, that's a big difference.
It's a big difference, and in this market, my view is you can't go in that high. I mean, it might have worked a couple of years ago. I don't think it would have done, but so needless to say, I've gone with the agent that was actually providing a realistic valuation that might attract people to view and then hope all hopes buy.
Yeah, I think once a property goes on too high and misses that initial interest and then starts getting reduced in price, and you've kind of lost that important start to any kind of marketing effort for a property. And once people know the property's been on for a while and it's been reduced and things, I think I smell blood and always more inclined to ask for an extra reduction on it.
Well, that's it. You get people like me that will look exactly for that. I'll look for the oldest properties, and then you'll see those that have just been put on at ridiculous prices.
Yep.
But they might have been on for 3 to 6 months or more. But then, even though they're interesting because they've been around and you think there might be negotiation, if they put such a high valuation on that property, you don't want to spend your time negotiating a property down to what the actual market value is. Obviously, there needs to be margin in it for us as developers or investors.
Yeah, so you think you're actually put off by properties that are listed too high, even if they've had some reductions already, because you don't want to go through the effort of trying to convince the vendor of the real price.
Well, it depends on the valuation. Obviously, if the current guide price is somewhere around what we would term market value, and market value meaning what we think the property is actually worth in its current condition, if it's around there, then no, that's interesting. But if the guide price is market value plus 20%, then no, it's not interesting, because there's very few vendors where you're going to go up to them and say, I'm interested in your property, but at nearly half the cost. No one's happy, because I don't want to insult people, but that's
that kind of ties into the other property I was going to mention. We're both based in Red Hill, and this property is in Reigate, and I think it's exceptionally hard to value property. It's on one of the main shopping streets, tucked behind a popular restaurant. And again, it's a very, very old property. It's Grade 2 listed, and it's a 4-bed house though. It's got no parking, no garden. The back opens up onto the sort of outside the kitchen area of the restaurant, and the front is down this alleyway down the side of the restaurant. And it was originally listed for sale a couple of years ago for $450,000, and having seen it sort of tracked over time, it's been reduced and reduced and reduced. It's been sold for a while, or at least taken off the market anyway, and then come back onto the market, so presumably that fell through. It's been up for auction and supposedly sold. I think it was up for auction for 250,000 in the end, so a massive reduction.
Wow.
For when that happened. And I think it was sold at that auction, but that was only a couple of months ago, and it's back on the market again now for 260,000.
260.
Yeah.
What?
The thing I can't work out is who would actually want to live there. I went and had a look around it, and it's absolutely fascinating property. There's nothing straight or level inside the property at all, but it's split across 3 floors. It's quite good sizes. It's got kitchen and bathroom and modern plumbing and stuff in it. So it has been lived in as a home. It's got central heating and all that kind of thing. In fact, it's even got supposedly a priest hole. Although I think actually
what?
A priest hole.
A priest hole?
Yeah, have you not heard of a priest hole? It's for when,
No.
for when the Catholics had to hide their priests. Well, it's either that or get your head chopped off, I imagine. But I'm not sure it was actually a priest hole. I think it actually was just a small loft space, really.
Yeah, but it's a good marketing tool, isn't it?
Yeah, right. It caught my interest.
I need to research my convent now, see if that's got a priest hole.
Yeah, quite. I have to find out what kind of religion of convent it was. But the problem with this property is I just don't know what you would do with it. It's such an intriguing property. I'd love to be able to do something with it, but I just don't know what. I mean, you couldn't make it an HMO because there's no parking.
How many rooms has it got?
4 bedrooms. It's got it's 3 floors, 2 rooms per floor, pretty much. So on the ground floor you've got living space and kitchen diner. Floor above you've got 2 bedrooms and a separate toilet and bathroom. And the floor above that you've got 2 bigger bedrooms. So there's lots of space there. And they're all good sized rooms, all double rooms, the bedrooms. Even the smaller ones got a bit taken off for the bathroom and stuff. If a family was to live there, again, there's no garden. You've got no space for your children, and you've got no parking as well. So I just don't know who or how or what it could be used for.
Well, it's got to be a first home, isn't it? It's got to be.
It's certainly in first home price range now. So I mean, in Reigate, you'd be hard pressed to buy a 2-bed house for 260,000.
Could it make flats? Is there enough studios?
I think the problem with flats is that it's grade 2 listed. I think you'd have trouble converting it and getting in stuff in there, wouldn't you? I mean, I don't know. Have you looked at the implications of being listed for your convent and what you can and can't do?
No, we're not at that stage. My understanding, and I haven't done something like that myself, but my understanding is there are hoops to jump through, and that's what puts a lot of people off. And again, that's a problem to be solved.
Yeah.
If one wants to solve that problem. So I think the challenge is obviously it takes cost, because generally you'll get a planning consultant that will work with the council, and then everything will need to be ratified by the Queen, whoever it is that says it's okay. So I think it's possible. It just takes time, and obviously time equals money, and you don't want to go into that. But you could. I mean, it's something you could look at, because it's something where you could potentially look at.
Presumably for flats, you'd need planning permission as well, which is going to then come back to looking at parking.
Yeah, if you've got, I mean, studio flats or something. Where's the? I suppose it just depends where the nearest park, because that problem won't go away. No,
I mean there is some on-street parking there, but it's limited. I mean you know the area I'm talking about, don't you, Stuart? So there's a multi-storey car park not far away from there, in the corner. But I mean, if you're parking there every day, it would cost you a fortune. So I think parking is probably the real problem for any kind of conversion or multiple occupation approach.
It sounds like all those questions need to be answered by someone. This is whether or not you want it to be you, doesn't it?
Well, it's not going to be me. I haven't got the appetite for that level of risk at the moment.
Yeah.
It's just such an intriguing property. I mean, I went when it was up for auction previously. I went and had a look around it at that point, knowing that I wasn't going to buy it, but just because I was so intrigued by the property. There's something else there actually when I went and looked around. The estate agent sort of monitoring the viewings asked me for my name and details and things, and then this person came along and asked for a name, and rather than a name he responded with the name of an animal. So I think he wasn't wanting to give away much in way of his details, and he zoomed around the property. He looked around the whole property at the time. Took me to look around the ground floor. So I'm really not sure what he was looking for, but intriguing approach to showing property.
Yeah.
I do wonder if he was looking to sort of look for valuables to strip from it or something, but I don't know why. I mean, I can't see how there would be enough value in a property to make purchasing it worthwhile. Interesting.
That's where the conversion becomes interesting, if that's possible, because that sounds like that could be the only route. Because, like you say, if it's got no garden area and no parking for families, only at that price it's interesting for some, but it's a big push if you're behind a shop and off a main thoroughfare with a small family. It's not going to be ideal, is it?
No, definitely not. I think it's always going to be a difficult one to resell as well. Whatever you do with it. I mean, just proven by the fact that it's been on the market for a couple of years and lost some 200,000 from its perceived value in that time. It's always going to be a difficult one to have a second exit plan for.
Yeah,
which I think is always sensible. So, should we call it wraps there for today?
Yeah.
Okay. More details on Stuart and I, along with any links we've mentioned. I'm not sure. I might link to the property in Reigate I mentioned, just for anyone who's curious. We found in the show notes at thebusinessofproperty.com.